Hi guys, my name is Sergey and I'm the owner of Unreasonable Custom Jewelry. Today in this video we're going to be talking about Alexandrite engagement rings. This video doesn't mean to make a specialist in buying Alexandrite out of you and doesn't make a purpose of making the gemologist out of you. If you want to get more information, please check out the blog. I'll link it in the description below. Right now I want to cover everything in a very short amount of time, so you would have the very clear idea what you're actually buying and what's out there on the market. First of all, let's figure out what is actually Alexandrite. Well, Alexandrite, that's the chrysoberyl type of the stone called chrysoberyl. Do not mistaken it with the beryl, which is pronounced in a similar way, but it's actually a completely different stone. So it's a chrysoberyl gem with the Alexandrite effect. And the Alexandrite effect, that's effect when your gemstone changing its color from blue-green in the daylight to the purple-red indoor. And this effect could be slightly vary from the 5% to 100%. So your gemstone can change the color just very lightly, or it can change the color like 100% from the, let's say, blue or green to the red. So when you chrysoberyl has this ability to change the color, then the stone called Alexandrite. There is a chrysoberyls that changing its color from yellow to green. They do not count as the Alexandrite. Or there is a chrysoberyls that do not change the colors at all. So we have to keep that in mind as well. You've probably seen the quote that Alexandrite, that's the emerald by day and the ruby by night. That's the very easy way to remember what it is, Alexandrite. What is important to know about Alexandrite when you're choosing it as your center stone for the engagement ring? It's important to keep in mind that the hardness of the Alexandrite is 8.5 on the Mach scale. That's the scale that shows how hard and scratch resistant the stone is, basically. What does it mean 8.5? Well, the diamond is 10, so it's up there. That's the hardest stone on the market. And the sapphire is 9, for example. So the Alexandrite is just slightly less scratch resistant than the sapphire. Another important thing to know is the refractive index of the Alexandrite is 1.7. What does it mean? Let's say the diamond has the refractive index of 2.4. which means that the diamond would spark 40% more than Alexandrite. For example, the moissanite has the refractive index of 2.7. And it's actually the easiest way to see the difference between the moissanite and the diamond. The moissanite just sparks way more. It's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just the way it is. It just sparks a little bit less than the diamond. Very important thing to know that on the market we have primarily two types of the Alexandrite, natural ones and the lab ones. First of all, let's talk about the natural Alexandrite, but before we actually go there, a little bit of history, why it's actually called Alexandrite. Well, it was discovered in 1830 in the Russian mountains Ural. There's a few stories how it was discovered, but eventually it was brought to the Alexandrite II to the day of his coronation, and that's why it's called the Alexandrite. The deposit itself, in Ural Mountains, wasn't big, and it was emptied in like 50-60 years or so. And these stones spread out throughout the higher society of Russia and France because they were very well connected. I actually can talk about it forever. I can make a separate video on the history of the Alexandrite. I should do this. So these stones was spread out pretty much throughout the higher society, and after the Russian Revolution, they spread out throughout the world. So I personally never seen the natural Russian Alexandrite. It's extremely rare thing. I know that there is a specialist who hunting specifically for this kind of stones, and there is the buyers who ready to pay $50,000-$60,000 per carat for this type of stone, and the price is also that high because this stone has very interesting stories behind them as well. Later on in the history, in 1980s, a few deposit was discovered in Brazil, and this stones turns out to be as good as Russians are. And very recently, there is a few deposit discovered in Sri Lanka and a few other places. This stone's not as good as the Brazilian one or the Russian one, but still very good one. Here's the thing you need to know. The word extreme applied quite a lot to Alexandrite. The Alexandrite is extremely rare and extremely expensive. There's actually a very common question like, is it Alexandrite more rare than the diamond? Well, first of all, the diamond is not very rare. It's out there on the market. You can buy it pretty much in any shape, in any size. It's always available. As soon as you have money, you can buy your diamond. With the Alexandrite, it's slightly different. You'll have to hunt for it for like a month or so, and there is lots of jewelry store who would ask you for 4 or 6 months to find a very good stone. It's an incredibly rare stone. The other very common question, is it more expensive? Yes, it's 4 or 5 times more expensive at least. The price for the very good natural Alexandrite only starts from $20,000 per carat. And if you, let's say you're looking at the 2 carat stone, we're looking at $50,000-$60,000 per stone. So it's extremely expensive gems. Since we're talking about the price, let's talk what factors affect the price of the Alexandrite. That's not all the factors, that's the main one. First of all, the price of Alexandrite affected by its color. And not only by the color changing abilities of this, but also how light is the stone or how dark it is. Because if the stone is too light, you don't want to have that, right? You don't want it to change from the light blue to light red. And at the same time, you don't want the stone to be too dark. You don't want the color to change from the dark blue to the dark red. It's not really visible. You want it to stay somewhere in the middle. And you also want this shift to be very distinguishable. I mean, you're probably not going to find right now 100% shift, but you want it to be somewhere around 80% or so. So it's very rare combination of these two things. Also, the price of the stone would depend on the clarity of the stone, but I have to mention over here that it's way less important than the color itself. In the Alexandrite case as well, but also if you think about the diamond, when we're talking about 4 C's, about clarity and colors, over there in the diamonds, the clarity of the stone affect the price in a similar way as the color of the stone. Where in Alexandrite, the clarity is way less important than the color. And the next aspect is, of course, next characteristic is the carat of the stone. One thing I also have to mention that the Alexandrites usually less than a carat in size. For example, the one that found in Sri Lanka, usually 95% of the stones less than a color. So it's very rare to find the natural Alexandrite the size more than a carat. Usually it's like 1 or 2 stones per month. It's extremely rare. And the fourth thing that would affect the price of the Alexandrite is it a treated stone or not? In 2 prime ways to treat Alexandrite, it's the radiation or the heat. And actually, before we go further, it doesn't mean that your stone would be radioactive or anything like that. It's going to be absolutely fine. It's just two different ways of treating the stone. Why it can be treated? To enhance the color of the stone itself. Sometimes it can be too light, sometimes it can be too dark, and you want to bring this color somewhere to the middle. So you want to make it more pleasant. If the stone is heat treated or radiation treated, it still goes as the natural stone. It's actually opposite from the diamonds. For example, if the diamond is the color treated, GIA no longer see this stone as the natural stone. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So we talked about the natural stone, and we've seen the prices, and as I said, it's extremely rare and it's extremely expensive, but still you want this beautiful shift of the color, you want this magical effect. So what to do in that case? Well, in this case, you want to go with the lab Alexandrite. We actually live in the beautiful time when we have them. And I personally love them. That's one of my favorite types of the stone under the reasonable budget. What is the lab Alexandrite? Well, that's the stone that has absolutely the same physical, chemical, and optical properties. So visually, it's going to be absolutely the same. All the physical and chemical characteristics of the stone would be absolutely identical to the natural stone. This stone would change its color in absolutely the same way. It actually will be much more clear than the natural stone as well. And with all this characteristic, the stone would cost significantly less. You're going to pay between $800 to $1,200 per carat, which is just a fraction of the cost of the natural stone. The very important thing that you have to keep in mind, it's sort of rare as well. It's sort of rare occasion to buy the lab Alexandrite itself. And that's because there is lots of fakes and imitation out there on the market, especially on the marketplaces. What is the fakes and imitation? Well, sometimes it's extremely poor imitations made out of glass, cubic zirconia, or even plastic, and you definitely don't want to go with this one. Sometimes you can see the stone called Xandrite. Nothing wrong with the stone, it's just a color changing glass basically. Extremely cheap, about $5 per carat or so. But it can be sold as the lab Alexandrite as well, and that's actually a completely different thing. It's going to have completely different hardness, and the color would change quite differently as well. The other thing, and I've seen this personally, that sometimes the sapphire, the color changed sapphire, can be sold as the natural Alexandrite or lab Alexandrite. And we actually did very recently the beautiful engagement ring, natural inspired engagement ring with the color changing corundum. Corundum, that's a sapphire. And our stone changed color from green to blue. It's absolutely gorgeous stone. I really loved it. It's really magical. I walked back and forth in our studio with it. We went to the beach and changing color extremely beautifully. But it's not a sapphire, and it's the price difference is pretty dramatic. So you have to be aware of that. What is the best way to buy lab Alexandrite? Well, under any circumstances, really, unless you're a professional gemologist, and if you are, you would probably not gonna watch this video, I wouldn't buy the lab Alexandrite on your own from the, let's say, marketplace or somewhere there. I would only buy it through the trusted jewelry store or through the gemologist or through the diamond dealer or something like that. Through someone who knows how to distinguish this two between each other. So you're not gonna end up paying for the glass $800 per carat. So, as I said, this video doesn't meant to make gemologist out of you or to make you a specialist in buying Alexandrite. But now you know what it actually is, that it's chrysoberyl with a color changing effect. Now you know what is the natural Alexandrite is, and that is extremely rare stone. It's extremely hard to find. And you basically looking at the natural Alexandrite only in the cases when you have $25,000+ budget for your engagement stone. And as I said, if you want absolutely the same visual effect and also physical and chemical effect, you go in with the lab Alexandrite and you paint just a fraction of that. And you're also aware that there's lots of fakes out there that you just have to avoid. I hope this information was very, very helpful on your journey on picking the best engagement ring. Just want to mention that we specialized on custom engagement ring and wedding band, and if you have a very cool idea in mind, contact us, shoot us an email, and we'll be glad to guide you on this beautiful journey. Thank you again for watching this video. I hope you find it helpful, and I'll see you next Thursday. Thank you so much for watching.